How often do you play sports?
In the summer, I play once a week, and in the winter, I play twice a week.
I play sports 5 times a week.
I don't, but I regularly walk.
I play sports most weeks.
I run 3-4 times a week.
What sports do you like doing?
I normally play hockey, and sometimes I also play football, but the main sport I do is mountain biking.
I like cycling and I like swimming.
I like to water ski and I like to sail.
I like watching a lot of sports, but too old now.
I like to play tennis, and I like to surf. But I live in Oxford, so I'm far away from the sea, so that doesn't happen as often as I would like.
Would you like to try windsurfing?
I have tried windsurfing, and I really enjoyed it.
No, I think I'd be afraid.
I have tried windsurfing. I prefer normal surfing, but yes, it's good. I like it.
Would you like to try roller skating?
I'd like to try roller skating.
I've tried it. I didn't like it.
Have you ever lived alone?
No, I haven't.
No.
Yes.
I have, yes. Yes.
I have lived alone. I lived alone in Chicago for a year after I got out of university.
Have you ever lived in another country?
Yes, I lived in the Netherlands for a year.
I have. I used to live in New Zealand when I was 5, and I currently live in Australia.
Oh, okay, I've lived in lots of different countries. I've lived in Ireland, I've lived in Ecuador, I've lived in France, I've lived in India, I've lived in Taiwan. Yeah, that's it.
For a short period of time, 2 months. I was in Australia for, yeah.
I have lived in another country, 2 of them as a matter of fact. This one, the UK, of course, and I also lived in New Zealand for 7 months.
How independent are you?
I like to think very independent. It's very important to me that I can support myself and make my own decisions.
Fairly independent. I earn a pretty good living and pay for everything, accommodation and food, etc.
Yeah, I would say generally I'm fairly independent. I like to make my own decisions and yeah.
I would say pretty independent, yeah. I still need my parents for some things, but I'm okay most of the time.
I'm extremely independent. I pay for everything and live on my own and have gone to school for 6 years now.
Crowds have gathered in London for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. News reaches London that a British expedition has climbed the world's highest mountain, Mount Everest. But the 2 men who have conquered the mountain are not British. Tenzin Norgay is Nepalese, and Edmund Hillary is from New Zealand. Born in Auckland in 1919, Hillary started climbing at university. He was strong and had a lot of stamina, so he could climb better and for longer than others. In 1953, he joined a British expedition to climb Everest. Mount Everest is in the Himalayas and is 8,848 metres high. Hillary and Tenzing reach 8,500 metres high on Mount Everest and camp there overnight. The next morning, Hillary's boots are frozen, so they have to wait for 2 hours. They set off for the summit at 6:30, each carrying a 14-kilogram pack. They can only climb slowly, and they can't climb without oxygen. But by 11:30 that morning, they have reached the summit. They spend just 15 minutes at the summit and then come back down the mountain.
Auckland sees the end of an epic journey to and from the top of the world, and a crowd of thousands waits to welcome New Zealand's heroes. From aboard the Solent flying boat, Sir Edmund Hillary and George Lowe emerged to report all's well to the men and women who in spirit were never far behind them.
When Hillary returned to New Zealand, he was a national hero. He was knighted by the Queen and became Sir Edmund Hillary. He joined other expeditions to the North and South Pole. But for the rest of his life, he returned to the Himalayas every year to build hospitals and schools for the Nepalese people. Despite all these achievements, he remained modest. When Edmund Hillary died in Auckland on the 11th of January 2008, many countries around the world mourned him, but in New Zealand he represents everything people admire, and he continues to inspire new generations of New Zealanders to follow their dreams. The next morning, Hillary's boots are frozen, so they have to wait for 2 hours. They can only climb slowly, and they can't climb without oxygen. But by 11:30 that morning, they have reached the summit. They spend just 15 minutes at the summit and then come back down the mountain. But for the rest of his life, he returned to the Himalayas every year to build hospitals and schools for the Nepalese people.